"He's not your dog anymore," the girl whispered, standing barefoot in the cold grass. But the man didn't care. He reached for the leash. That's when Sonny stepped between them. Teeth, bared eyes locked, ready to protect the only family he had ever known. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments? And if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. The late autumn sun filtered gently through the misty air over Glenbrook, a quaint town nestled at the edge of Oregon's pine-laced hills. A breeze stirred fallen maple leaves along the cobblestone sidewalks, where vendors were just finishing setting up their stalls for the Saturday farmers' market. The air smelled of cinnamon, roasted nuts, and morning dew thick with the chatter of neighbors and the barking of distant dogs. The town was peaceful, slow-moving, and a little frayed at the edges, much like the woman quietly gripping the hand of a small girl as they strolled through the market. Sarah Parker, 34, was a tall and slender woman with sandy blonde hair pinned into a tired bun and pale green eyes that always seemed to be scanning the horizon. She wore a faded denim jacket over a plaid flannel shirt, the same one she had inherited from her father. There was a cautious grace in her walk, the kind that came from years of keeping balance on shaky ground. Since her husband died in a tractor accident 4 years ago, Sarah had raised their daughter Ellie alone, all while trying to keep their modest family farm from collapsing under debt. Though Sarah had grown wary of strangers and skeptical of kindness, there was a gentleness she reserved entirely for her daughter, a quiet devotion that softened her guarded tone and firm expression. Ellie Mae Parker, aged 7, had her mother's green eyes but her father's thick chestnut curls. A little on the short side, she wore a mismatched outfit, a yellow raincoat over a dinosaur-themed hoodie, and red sneakers caked in yesterday's mud. Ellie had the boundless curiosity of a child who had spent her life surrounded by animals, dirt, and the open sky. She skipped between stalls, pausing to peek at baskets of apples or to greet the occasional dog tied near a post. But then something made her stop entirely. Near a half-closed stall, one that hadn't even fully opened for the day, was a large golden retriever, his coat dull and patchy ribs faintly visible beneath his chest. His leash was looped around a cracked wooden beam, and his eyes held the cloudy film of hunger and long, sunless days. He was maybe 6 or 7 years old, with a faint white streak running down his snout. The sign above him read nothing. No name, no explanation. Just a being occupying space. Ellie didn't speak. She simply walked forward, quiet as mist, and crouched a few feet away from the dog. The retriever lifted his head slightly. His ears twitched, but he did not move. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply watched. Sarah, noticing the sudden halt in her daughter's footsteps, followed her gaze and sighed heavily. "Sweetie, stay close," she said, her tone flat but not unkind. Mommy Ellie whispered without turning her head, "He looks really, really sad." Sarah approached slowly, eyes narrowing at the stall. Behind it, a stocky man with a stained apron was arguing with another vendor over meat prices. His hair was gray at the sides, shaved short, and his arms bore faded tattoos beneath rolled sleeves. This was Kyle Jensen, a local butcher known more for his temper than his tenderness. Once he had run a small kennel behind his shop, but rumors of neglect and angry outbursts led to its quiet shutdown last spring. He now sold jerky and sausages at the market, his stall always smelling faintly of vinegar and smoke. Sarah sighed again. "That's Kyle's dog," she muttered mostly to herself. Ellie looked up. "Can I pet him?" I don't think Sarah began, but Ellie was already approaching Kyle. "Excuse me, sir," Ellie said, her voice small but clear. "Is that your dog?" Kyle glanced at her with brief disinterest. "Was. He's no good. Nobody wants him. He just eats and lies around. Can I pet him?" Kyle shrugged. "Do what you want." Ellie returned to the dog. "Hi there, boy," she said, crouching low, her hand extended slowly. The retriever sniffed the air, then gently pressed his nose into her palm. A flick of the tail. Then stillness. Sarah stood behind, arms crossed, watching. The moment stretched longer than she expected. "What's his name?" Ellie asked. "Doesn't have one," Kyle replied curtly. Ellie looked up at her mother. "Can we give him one?" Sarah paused. Her mind was already full of bills. Repair lists, the surveyor who was coming next week to assess the farm's boundaries, and that unsettling call from Evergrace Development, the company that kept offering to relieve her burden by buying the land. But then she looked at Ellie, who was now resting her hand gently on the dog's back, and the dog, this nameless, discarded creature who leaned into the touch as if he had been waiting years for it. "We're not bringing him home," Sarah said softly but firmly. "I know," Ellie replied. They stood there like that, the three of them, a woman thinking of bills, a child thinking of names, and a dog thinking if dogs think in such ways that maybe he wasn't forgotten after all. "What would you name him?" Sarah asked after a long moment. Ellie grinned. "Sunny, because he needs sunshine." Sarah smiled, despite herself. "Let's go get apples." Ellie nodded, but turned back to Sunny just once more to whisper, "We'll come back, okay?" And for the first time that morning, Sunny's tail gave a slow, measured wag. The morning after, the market felt heavier somehow, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Rain had swept through Glenbrook overnight, leaving the fields soaked and the air sharp with petrichor. Sarah stood on the porch of the Parker farmhouse, coffee in hand, her flannel shirt hanging loosely over her jeans. Her boots were muddy from the early chores, checking the broken gate in the sheep pen and scooping up fallen branches from the storm. She stared out into the fog where the barn sat quietly in the distance. The old structure had seen better days like everything else on the property, but it was home. She heard the faint thud of sneakers behind her before she heard the voice. "Mommy," Ellie called softly, tugging at the hem of Sarah's coat. "Can we go get him today? Sunny's waiting." Sarah looked down at her daughter. Ellie had slept in her hoodie again, dinosaur tail print poking out from beneath the back. Her eyes were earnest, so full of hope that Sarah's instinctive no crumbled before it could reach her lips. "Get your jacket," Sarah said, "and bring a blanket." The market was quieter on Sunday mornings. Kyle wasn't at his stall, but Sunny was still there, lying curled by the same cracked post. His fur was damp from the rain, and the corner of his ear twitched at their approach. This time, Sarah didn't hesitate. She walked directly to the post and unclipped the leash. Sunny blinked up at her, his eyes unsure but no longer distant. Ellie had brought one of the blue blankets from the couch, threadbare and covered in stars. She wrapped it around the dog's shoulders gently. "You're coming home with us now, Sunny." Back at the farmhouse, the transition wasn't seamless. Sunny hesitated at the porch step, pawing once at the wooden stair, before Ellie guided him gently inside. The house smelled of hay lemon soap and wood smoke. Sunny sniffed each corner cautiously, avoiding adults, flinching slightly when Sarah passed him with an armload of towels. But with Ellie he was a shadow, trailing behind her from room to room, tail low but wagging. In her bedroom, Ellie set up a large cushion beside her bed and told him stories, tales about the farm, her favorite picture books, and her dream of teaching Sunny how to dance like the dogs in cartoons. Sunny rested his head on his paws and listened, his ears twitching at the sound of her voice. Meanwhile, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, bills spread in front of her like autumn leaves. She rubbed her temples, heart heavy. Bringing Sunny home had been a leap, an emotional one, not financial, but everything she did seemed to carry weight these days. The phone rang, jarring her from thought. She stared at the name flashing on the screen, Marcus Hale. She hesitated, then answered. Marcus had a warm, baritone voice, The kind that made you feel like you'd known him for years. Mrs. Parker, I hope I'm not calling too early. Sarah's tone stayed neutral. It's fine. What can I help you with? Well, Marcus said, chuckling softly, I just wanted to follow up on our offer. Evergrace is prepared to increase the figure. We've seen your land. It's beautiful, valuable. You wouldn't have to worry about repairs or taxes anymore, just a fresh start. Sarah glanced out the window where Ellie was tossing a ball across the yard. Sunny chased it tentatively, still unsure how to play. I'm not interested, she replied. Not even a meeting? Marcus asked. Just 15 minutes, no pressure, I promise. She hung up without replying. Marcus Hale, mid-40s, always dressed like he was on a yacht. Tailored blazers, pressed slacks, and teeth too white to be trustworthy. He was the kind of man who smelled of cedarwood cologne and always carried a folder that never left his hand. Evergrace had been circling the Parker property for months, eager to convert farmland into housing lots. So far, Sarah had said no, but the offers kept getting bigger. That evening, Sunny startled at the sound of thunder and backed into the pantry, knocking over a broom. Ellie crawled in beside him and read her favorite book aloud until his breathing slowed. Sarah watched from the kitchen and couldn't help but feel something shift inside her. Later, she found herself sitting beside her daughter on the floor. Sunny was between them, snoring softly. His body finally relaxed. Why do you think he was so scared of thunder? Ellie asked. Sarah thought of the bruises she'd seen on animals before. The twitchy fear. The way Sunny flinched if someone raised their voice too quickly. Some dogs remember things that hurt, she said gently. Even when they're in a safe place. Ellie nodded. That's why I'll never shout near him. Sarah didn't say anything. She just pulled the blanket higher over her daughter's shoulders. Out in the yard, the wind stirred again, brushing against the barn. Inside the house, the air felt a little lighter for now. The annual Glenbrook Harvest Festival painted the town in hues of amber and burnt orange. Pumpkins lined the sidewalks, hand-painted signs pointed to hayrides and cider tastings, and children darted through crowds with faces painted like tigers and butterflies. It was a warm, windy Saturday in early November, the kind that made everyone believe autumn might last forever. Ellie Mae Parker gripped Sunny's leash as they moved through the heart of the town square. She wore a soft orange vest over her hoodie and carried a paper flyer in one hand. Sunny, the golden retriever she had rescued just weeks earlier, walked calmly beside her ears, twitching at the sounds of laughter and fiddles in the distance. His coat had begun to regain its golden luster, and though he still flinched at sharp sounds, his posture was more confident now, especially when Ellie was near. Sarah trailed behind her daughter, her arms crossed denim jacket pulled tightly around her slim frame. Her eyes weren't on the festival or even on Ellie. Her mind was still replaying the document she'd found that morning in a packet from Evergrace Development. It was a copy of an old land deed supposedly proving her father had sold the Parker farm before his passing, but the signature didn't match. Her stomach had tightened the moment she saw it. Something was off. Marcus Hale had promised transparency, but this felt like a game, and Sarah didn't like being played. Mom, look, Ellie called, pointing toward a white tent on the edge of the fairground. The canvas sign read, Glenbrook Rescue Shelter. Dog Agility Demos. Underneath the sign stood a simple course short-weave poles, a ramp, a tunnel, and 2 low hurdles made of PVC pipe. A small crowd gathered as local dogs and owners took turns, some successful, others not so much. At the table beside the tent stood a woman in her late 40s, wearing a green shelter hoodie and holding a clipboard. Her short, curly black hair was streaked with gray, and her smile carried the calm confidence of someone used to reading animals and people alike. Her name tag read Tammy Holt, volunteer trainer. Ellie approached the table, her eyes glowing. Can Sunny try? Tammy looked at the dog, then at Ellie, measuring their connection in a single glance. Is he new to agility? He's never done it before, Ellie said proudly, but he's really smart. Tammy nodded and knelt beside Sonny. Hi there, buddy. She held her hand out gently. Sonny sniffed it cautiously but without fear. Let's see what he's got. Tammy smiled. You lead, I'll coach. Ellie led Sonny to the starting line while Sarah watched from a bench nearby, the crumpled document from Evergrace still folded in her coat pocket. Start with the tunnel, Tammy instructed, gesturing with a gentle wave. Stay calm. Let him follow your energy. Ellie crouched beside the tunnel entrance. Come on, Sonny, you can do it. To everyone's surprise, Sonny didn't hesitate. He trotted through the tunnel with only a slight pause, halfway emerging on the other side to a round of claps. Ellie clapped too, grinning. Good boy. The hurdles were next. Sonny looked to Ellie for direction, and when she moved forward, he followed. He cleared the bars not gracefully, but cleanly. When he navigated the weave poles with a surprising quickness, even Tammy raised her eyebrows. By the time Sonny trotted up the ramp and paused at the top tail, wagging a small group had gathered to watch. One man whispered, That's the rescue dog from the market, isn't it? Tammy joined Sarah near the bench. You've got something special there, she said, nodding toward Ellie and Sonny. He's responsive, eager, and grounded by that little girl. You should consider entering him in the regional agility trial next month. We're still taking applications. Sarah blinked. He's only been with us a few weeks. Tammy shrugged. Sometimes it's not about time, it's about trust. Back at home that evening, while Ellie played with Sonny in the yard, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with the Evergrace document in front of her. She compared it to the only other copy she had, the original deed from her father's safe. The signatures weren't the same, not even close. She remembered what her father once told her. Paper can lie. Land doesn't. You feel what belongs to you in your bones. Sarah reached for her phone. Hi, this is Sarah Parker, she said when the receptionist answered. I need to speak with someone about a possible forged land deed. The sun hovered low over Glenbrook's rolling hills, casting long shadows across the open training field behind the Glenbrook Rescue Shelter. It was a crisp Saturday morning, and a soft breeze rustled the yellowing leaves that littered the grass. Ellie Parker stood at the edge of the agility course, her cheeks pink from the cold, her fingers wrapped tightly around Sonny's leash. Sonny, the golden retriever she had rescued only a few weeks prior, stood alert beside her. His coat now gleamed with health, and the gentle confidence in his gait was a world apart from the frightened, forgotten dog they'd met at the market. He had taken to training with surprising ease. Tammy Holt, the volunteer trainer, often remarked how quickly Sonny picked up commands, how responsive he was to Ellie's tone and gestures. It was clear to anyone watching that theirs was a bond born of something deep, perhaps something healing in both of them. The other participants, mostly older kids and teens with Labradors or Border Collies, waited patiently for their turn. Sarah stood nearby, arms folded over her flannel coat, her sharp green eyes watching everything. She hadn't told Ellie about the document again, not yet, but she had met with the town's legal aid the day before. Something wasn't right with Evergrace, and now she had a name, Thomas Beckett, a lawyer in Portland, known for taking on agricultural land dispute cases and winning. Sarah hadn't made up her mind to hire him, but the folder of notes and email printouts in her purse was growing thicker by the day. As Ellie prepared to send Sonny through the tunnel, a sharp voice broke the moment. Well, I'll be damned. Look who crawled out of his hole. Sarah's eyes snapped toward the voice, and every muscle in her body tightened. A man stood just beyond the fence arms, crossed over a thick leather jacket. Kyle Jensen, the dog's former owner. He hadn't changed much since the last time she saw him. Still stocky mid-50s, his grizzled hair slicked back and boots caked in dried mud. His face was rough and wind-chapped, but his eyes gleamed with that same sharp, selfish glint she remembered from the market. "That's my dog Kyle," said, stepping closer. Ellie turned slowly, her body stiff. "He's not yours anymore," she said, her voice small but clear. Kyle smirked. "I never gave him away. You took him without permission. That's theft, little girl." Tammy stepped forward, voice firm. "You signed off, Kyle. The shelter documented your release. You abandoned him at your booth for days. That's on record." Kyle ignored her. "He's worth money now, isn't he? People talk. Heard about that agility thing. Suddenly he's a prize dog, huh?" Sonny let out a low growl, stepping in front of Ellie. His stance was not fearful, it was protective. His tail was stiff body, slightly lowered, but his eyes never left Kyle. Sarah stepped between them. "If you have a claim, take it to court, but I promise you, Kyle Sonny is not going anywhere." Kyle's smirk fell into a scowl. "We'll see." He turned and walked off, his boots crunching over the gravel. But the tension hung like smoke in the cold morning air. Later that afternoon at home, Ellie sat curled on the living room floor beside Sonny. She rested her cheek against his shoulder as he breathed slow and steady. She hadn't cried, not even once, but Sarah could see it, the worry flickering behind her daughter's quiet. "Mom," Ellie said, not looking up. "What if he tries to take Sonny away?" Sarah knelt beside her. "He won't," she said softly. "We're going to talk to someone who knows the law. We're going to make sure Sonny stays with us. Forever." That Monday, Sarah met with Thomas Beckett in his office in Portland. He was a tall, lean man in his early 60s with neatly combed white hair and a calm, precise voice. He wore a charcoal gray suit and glasses perched low on his nose. His office was lined with wooden shelves and smelled faintly of lemon polish and old leather. Thomas reviewed both the Evergrace deed and the adoption documents from the shelter. He leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against his chin. "Marcus Hale," he muttered. "I've seen his name before." Sarah leaned in. "Where?" "In 3 other cases involving farmland across Oregon," Thomas said. All had similar patterns: sudden missing deeds, forged sale agreements, pressure campaigns. "He's not just a smooth talker, Miss Parker. He's a predator." Sarah felt a chill crawl up her spine. "I'll take the case," he continued. "For the land. And for the dog." She looked at him surprised. "You'd handle both." He smiled. "They're connected, aren't they? The law cares more about documentation than intentions. But people like Kyle and Marcus, they leave fingerprints. And you've got more than a story, you've got proof." Back in Glenbrook, Ellie and Sonny continued their training. Tammy had heard about Kyle's outburst and made arrangements for Ellie to use a private field near her home to train safely. There, free from the weight of onlookers, Sonny blossomed. He began responding to new voice cues, mastering tighter turns and faster jumps. His loyalty to Ellie was visible in every movement, his eyes always locked on her, his body attuned to her energy. One day, after nailing a full sequence of jumps and weaving poles, Sonny ran back to Ellie, tail wagging wildly. She knelt, arms open, and he crashed into her embrace, tongue licking her cheek. "You're not going anywhere," she whispered into his fur. "You're mine." The morning of the regional agility competition arrived with a thin veil of fog clinging to the hills outside Glenbrook. Dew painted the grass silver, and the trees whispered with wind, their leaves fluttering like 1,000 small hearts. The event was held at Larkstone County Fairgrounds, a wide expanse of manicured turf and bleachers ringed by banners and food stands. Despite the chill, the place buzzed with the excitement of dozens of dogs barking tails, wagging handlers warming up, and spectators filling the stands with coffee in hand. Ellie Parker stood at the entrance to the ring dressed in her best forest green windbreaker and jeans tucked into her red sneakers. Her cheeks were flushed partly from the cold, partly from nerves. Sunny stood beside her tail, calm golden fur, brushed to a Shane eyes alert but peaceful. Now, fully 7 years old, Sunny had the strength of a dog in his prime, and the soul of one who had finally found his place. Sarah, watching from the fence, was her usual composed self, tall, lean in her flannel coat and boots, her arms crossed loosely as if holding her own heart in place. The last few weeks had aged her in small ways, more gray at her temples, more silence behind her words, but her eyes had never looked more alive. The competition had drawn a crowd from several towns. In the judge's tent stood Marla Kingston, a retired championship handler in her 60s, tall and sharp-featured with silver hair tied in a bun and a clipboard always in hand. Known for her no-nonsense attitude, Marla evaluated every dog with the same, even unreadable stare. Ellie crouched next to Sunny at the starting line. "We've got this," she whispered. "No matter what happens, you're my winner." Marla's whistle pierced the air. Sunny took off like a shot. He glided over the first hurdle, flowed through the weave poles with grace, and darted into the tunnel like golden lightning. His every move was focused, not flashy, clean, precise, instinctive. As he cleared the final ramp and landed in a near-perfect finish beside Ellie, the crowd erupted. Even Marla allowed herself a small, satisfied nod. Ellie wrapped her arms around Sunny's neck as he licked her cheek-tail, wagging like a banner in a parade. But the moment shattered with the harsh bark of a voice. "Get away from my dog." All eyes turned. Kyle Jensen stood at the edge of the ring, flanked by 2 men, one with a camcorder, the other holding what appeared to be a wrinkled registration paper. Kyle was red-faced and loud, his boot scuffing the dirt as he stormed toward the gate. "That's my dog, and I'm taking him back," he shouted. "You're all witnesses." Sarah moved fast, stepping between Kyle and the ring. "Back off, Kyle. I've got proof he waived the paper. This says he was never legally transferred. I never signed a release." "You people stole him," the crowd murmured. Marla raised her hand for silence, but Sunny had already made his own judgment. As Kyle neared, Sunny placed himself in front of Ellie and let out a sharp, protective bark. His stance was low and steady eyes locked on Kyle, muscles coiled like wire. Kyle froze. A volunteer security guard, a stocky man in a reflective vest named Raymond, quickly intervened. "Sir, you need to step outside the perimeter." "This is a public event," Kyle argued. Raymond didn't move. "It's also under county ordinance. You cause a scene, we call the sheriff." Sarah pulled Ellie back gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. Stay with Sunny." Kyle's outburst made its way to the county courthouse by the following Monday, where a judge agreed to hear the case immediately due to the public disturbance and disputed ownership. Sarah and Ellie arrived with Sunny and their attorney, Thomas Beckett, while Kyle showed up with a second-hand suit and the same fake registration. In court, the room was hushed. Thomas presented documents from the Glenbrook Rescue Shelter proving that Sunny had been abandoned. He called Tammy Holt, the trainer who testified about the state of Sunny when found malnourished, anxious, unloved. Next came Ellie Small in the witness stand, but steady. "He was sad," she said. "He didn't even have a name. I gave him one. I gave him love. He sleeps by my bed every night. He saved me once when a car came too fast. He's not a thing. He's my family." The judge, a composed woman named Judge Lorna Melrose, reviewed the files, then slowly removed her glasses. "Mr. Jensen," she said firmly, "your claims are unsupported. The shelter's records are valid. The court finds that the dog legally belongs to the Parker family." Kyle stood up angrily, but Judge Melrose raised her hand. "And due to your behavior, we will be opening an investigation into your past handling of animals." Thomas wasn't done. He presented the Evergrace document and the findings from his team's investigation. as the evidence of forged deeds and pressuring tactics unraveled, Marcus Hale's name appeared in email chains and flagged property transfers. 2 weeks later, Marcus resigned from Evergrace amid legal scrutiny, and all claims to the Parker land were withdrawn. Back in Glenbrook, the town held its breath, then sighed as one. Ellie and Sonny resumed training now, more as a game than for competition. Sarah returned to repairing fences and planting for winter. There was still debt, still work, but the land was theirs. The house was still standing, and the bond between a girl and her dog had become something bigger than either of them. It had become a story the town whispered at school playgrounds and over fences, a story of hope, loyalty, and courage. In time, the Parker farm would become known for more than crops. It became a place where wounded souls, human and animal alike, were given a second chance. And at the edge of the field, under the shade of an old maple tree, Ellie often sat beside Sonny as the wind rustled the grass. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she just listened, and Sonny, ever watchful, never left her side again. Sometimes the miracles we pray for don't come in the form of lightning or thunder. They arrive quietly on 4 paws, with a wounded heart and a longing for love. Sonny wasn't just a dog. He was a reminder that even the most broken can be made whole again when given patience, kindness, and faith. This story isn't just about Ellie or Sarah or a courtroom victory. It's about how love, real, sacrificial love, can transform lives. And maybe, just maybe, it's about how God sends us what we need, not always in the way we expect, but exactly when we need it most. So if you're facing something heavy today, remember, this redemption is real. Healing is possible. And sometimes the answer to your prayer is waiting for you in the unlikeliest of places. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment Amen below if you believe that love can conquer fear and that every creature deserves a second chance. Subscribe to our channel for more real stories that show the quiet power of faith, love, and the miracles that walk among us, sometimes on 4 legs. And may God bless you and your family always.